Blake, who's your favorite celebrity besides me?
Toby, how many times do I have to tell you, you aren't even sniffing Z-level celebrity status?
Welcome to the Church Gear Podcast, where we pull the tech out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
I'm your host, Blake Hodges, a man who is trying to keep his co-host tethered to reality. And I'm here with my co-host who is fresh out of the ego rehab, Toby Walters.
You just said co-host twice. Are you just out of rehab?
Yes, I've been coping with my co-host.
Sniffing Z-level, is that what the kids are saying now?
Toby, I don't know what the kids are saying. My kids are now kind of teenagers, you know, my 10th grade boys. I don't know if
That's a good point.
I don't know what the kids say.
You know, I've thought recently that every production director should have to spend some time in youth ministry because so many of their volunteers end up coming from the youth. And if they don't have the, the pastoral skills to lead those people and have the patience to teach them, it's not going to go well.
Toby, this tells me you haven't been to a church camp in a while. That's where they're all recruiting. That's where they're at, man, doing exactly what you just said. They're at camp, running the sound booth, and they should take like little applications to serve on Sunday. That's actually a little pro tip right there.
And I do feel like it's been a long time since I served in production ministry. Back in my day, Blake.
Back in my day. Toby's old.
It did feel like production guys tended to be older and grouchier. And that was definitely my experience. I think people that got into production ministry in the 90s around my age, they would probably say the same, that those guys were often very grouchy and very pushy with how they thought things should be done. And they weren't necessarily the most like gentle pastoral leaders. So this is good to hear that the production guys are hanging out at church camp.
Are you telling me, Toby, you still got some scars from production guys yelling at you when you were a kid?
Yes, I do. Maybe I'll bring them out of my counseling sessions and write about them someday. So I got to meet a up-and-coming famous production person. We'll just call him that. He's the most likable guy I've met in a long time. But our guest today...
Toby, you know me.
Exactly. So I met him at the SALT conference just recently in Dallas. And the way I knew that he was there is that because he and Brad Bramer, our buddy from Southeast Christian, they were doing some reels together. And so I was just scrolling reels, and all of a sudden I see Brad and our guest doing a gag reel at the SALT conference. I was like, okay, they're here, and I didn't even know it. So
celebrity sighting.
I know. It was fun to meet our guest in person, and you'll get to hear on this episode, like, he is hyper. It's like he's been chugging sugar all day long.
It's the first time I've ever met someone that can talk faster than me since I was in debate in college. I mean, he's got it down.
And I always listen to my podcasts anywhere from like 1.5 speed to 2 speed, just depending on who it is on the episode. I think if I listen to this one, I'll have to listen like at half speed for our guest.
Well, coming to you and introducing the just Shep from Elevation Church, but we think he might be the Flash in disguise, and he does stuff with video. Welcome to the pod.
Video stuff. That's a great introduction, actually. It's just it's just video stuff at the end of the day. What do you do? I don't know. Production.
Yep. Do you have like a director or engineer in your title?
Technically, broadcast engineer is my title. I specialize in video, but I oversee all of our technology at our broadcast campus. So,
okay, so we could call you video stuff engineer.
Yeah, video stuff, video things. The market term is vidiot or video. They got all kinds of terminology for us video boys, but I like to dabble in a little bit of everything. So,
Blake, you were pretty young yourself, but I have a 12-year-old boy who watches a lot of YouTube, and I feel like we have a famous YouTuber on just because his energy level. Do you get that from Shep?
Yeah, well, he speaks faster than anyone we've spoken to, which I really love. I'm going to call him the broadcast baddie.
Okay.
Ooh, I'll take that. I mean, I am watching the Jake Paul and Mike Tyson fight tonight, so
yep.
If this is recorded at a later date, so but I guess YouTube broadcast baddie is crazy. Actually,
please put that on a shirt and wear it to church. All right,
just straight up.
To get to know a little bit more about Stephen here, we're going to do 5 truths and a lie. Although he, for all of his wisdom, sent us 4 truths and a lie. He did not read our 5 truths.
We assume.
So we're going to make fun of him.
Yeah. Counting is hard.
This is our weekly game to introduce our guests so you can get to know them and see if me and Toby can sniff out the lie. Number 1, I'm fluent in French.
Oui, oui.
Number 2, I started dating and got married within 1 year. Number 3, I played Warzone against famous streamers.
See, we're already halfway there. Okay.
Number 4, I ate the world's hottest chocolate and it made me puke.
I assume we're talking hot spice.
Toby, if you even sniffed that chocolate, would you die?
Probably.
Me too.
Yeah.
Number 5, I can deadlift over 500 pounds. I'm going to lock in on the deadlift over 500 pounds because that's a lot of weight.
Okay. And I'm going to say he's not fluent in French.
Well, both of you guys are wrong, actually. So, yeah, I can deadlift over 525 is my PR on deadlift. So yeah, I'm chilling. I'm retired. I'm an old man now. And then, yeah, je peux parler en français. Moi, je suis fluent en la langue de France. Oui, je parle français. So I actually took 12 years of French growing up. And so I'm not as fluent as I was a couple years ago, but it's still just a cool thing. It means absolutely nothing here in America. I've never used it. I've never even been out of the country, so it's absolutely useless. But the lie was actually the world's hottest chocolate made me throw up. It was actually Satan's toe. It was the world's hottest lollipop. So a little bit of a nuance there, but if you've ever seen it, it's literally a toe. It's disgusting. And we had like a competition, and I was. I don't want to say the word sucking on it, but I was consuming it for 47 minutes before I projectile vomited.
Shep, the broadcast baddie who is sucking on Satan's toe. You're going to get in so much trouble from this podcast. I'm so excited.
I'm getting clipped for sure.
Stephen, please tell people in the future that you spent 12 years in French just to use the most you ever did on the Church Gear podcast. That's quite a lot of work for that.
Yeah. Did you not marry a French woman at least?
This was a culmination. No, I married a Texan, which is, I'd toss
Couldn't be more different.
I take the Texan though for sure. But that was my culmination of my French skills. I studied 12 years for this moment, so here we are. You're welcome. You're welcome to everyone on here. You're like, sick, dude.
And are you naturally this hyper, or is there a lot of sugar in your last hour of your life?
Or is Satan's toe still affecting you?
Well, but I mean, I think that definitely did some psychological damage, was the Satan's toe. But no, ADHD, I've never been diagnosed. My mom was always like, nah, dog, my son does not have ADHD. And so I was just told that I didn't have it. But anyway. But no, I've only had 2 cups of coffee today. I enjoy coffee. I like coffee. I did one early this morning. I got up at 4 a.m. this morning. I don't know. I'm an early riser. I got 2 kids. And when you try to stay young with 2 kids, you have to transition to the early morning dad life. So I'm a early riser. I actually was trying to jump on Call of Duty super early this morning because that's the best time to play. I'm not a night owl, but coffee gets me going. So the fact that I did drink 1 cup of coffee super early this morning, that I had one around like noonish, so it's been a couple hours. Maybe I'll have one later today, but I just have energy. I don't know why God wired me this way, but it just is what it is. And so I just accept it and try to control my tongue when I need to. So
well, luckily this is not being broadcast live, so we can bleep out all your tongue mishaps on this episode.
Yes,
no, you cannot mute
cut it all out.
You cannot mute the broadcast baddie. All right.
Edit, yeah, dude. Honestly, yeah, we're live. I think it's so, dude. You can't when you're live and your podcasts are a little bit easier because I can say, hey, cut that out, but I try not to. I try to leave everything in because. Yeah, why not? Just keep it natural. Keep it all.
We'll get it raw.
So
okay, exactly. So started dating and got married within 1 year. Is that because you fell in love so fast, or she fell in love so fast?
Great question. It was her falling in love, but a mutual decision to say, hey, this is something that we will both want to pursue. But it was great. Fantastic. We spent a couple months dating. And then I was like, yep, this is definitely the one. Fun fact. No one knows this story. I saved it for you guys. When my wife and I first met, I was moving down to the Melbourne campus, in 2016 to launch an Elevation campus. And, I had met her dad a couple months before. We hit it off. It was great. He loved me. I loved him. Just a vibe, right? So then when they heard that I was moving down to Florida, he literally was like, that guy has to come live at my house. And he had an 18-year-old daughter at the time. And I was literally like, yo, is this guy tripping? Like, he knows that, like, so I literally moved in with my wife, my current wife. She was not with my wife, but literally moved in and lived with them for about 6 months before I moved out. Clarification: I moved out before we started dating. So, and we had
Sure,
very
we
forward
believe you. We
conversation.
believe you.
Yeah. You know, you gotta, yeah. Exactly. We're live. Remember. But it was great, and yeah. I mean, best decision. I mean, grateful for her dad, but he definitely set that thing up. He knew what he was doing. So, and here we are, 7 years later. We've been married for 7 years. We got 2 kids, and yeah, I wouldn't change it for a thing. So,
Nice.
fun fact: you guys are the only ones that actually I've talked about that story with. 'Cause
Sweet.
it's like kind of a sus story. If you it is kind of sus if you think about it. You're like, huh,
Yeah.
okay.
Hey,
But
all's
yeah,
well
great.
that ends well.
Sure. Yeah. 7 years of marriage in, and it
Yeah.
obviously worked out.
Yeah, we're
So
cooking.
deadlifting 500 pounds. Now, I like to think that Pastor Furtick is probably the fittest pastor out there, or he's
Between him and
definitely
Pastor
in the running.
Craig,
Yeah.
there's a toss up for sure. Pastor Craig's biceps are insane, but yeah, no, I've been lifting my whole life, played high school sports, and just kind of been very, very consistent at it. And we've got a group of guys who we all work out together at church or at work because we have a gym. No weird flex, and so we all like to work out together. And we have a great time working out. And yeah, I pulled 505 for the first time in that gym, and then I pulled 525 in like a commercial gym. It was super chill, but it's just kind of like a good feeling, you know, when you're in the gym and you got everybody looking at you like, yo, is that guy about to pull? Oh shoot, that guy's pulling that, you know, because I'm usually the one looking at the other people in the gym, but it is kind of a weird, you know, and now I just sound like conceited and self.
No, me and Toby are very jealous. Like, you know, you're younger than both of us and you speak French and you can deadlift 500 pounds, which is almost half my body weight. So I'm very jealous.
Great. Well, we'll have to get a lift in at some point in time then soon. So
As long as that is you lifting me, not us lifting together.
yeah, no, of course. That's what I meant. So
And who
that's
can
the only
lift?
kind of lift.
Who can lift the most on the Elevation staff?
We did have a bench press competition, but you got to give it to Pastor Stephen. He just bench presses. No, I'm just kidding. He's actually incredibly fit. I'm inspired by him all the time. But we actually have a guy, Chris Everett. Shout out Chris Everett. He won our bench press competition. He benched 315 this year.
Dang.
But last year, if you guys know Tiffany Hudson, one of our worship leaders, she's amazing. Her husband, Mate, he has his own like training program. He weighs like 210. He's like 6'4", and he benched 335 last year. And that was to me, that's the highest I've seen one of our regular staff bench. However, Pastor has one of our guys who's on staff. He's been running security and he does a lot of our fitness stuff as well. He hit 395 within 5 minutes. His name is Buck. He's insane. If you saw him, you'd be like, oh yes, of course you bench 395. But he's the one who basically puts on our bench press competitions and like our fitness challenges and things like that. And he kind of like runs the gym, if you will, and then also does a lot of security stuff and just a lot of other admin work. But so we do this competition, right? It's an hour long. We've got a bunch of staff. We're doing rotation. It's very official. We've got coaches and refs who are calling it and all that kind of stuff. And at the end of every single bench press competition, we're literally always like, Buck, because dude's huge and he doesn't compete. And so then we get him hyped up, we get him jacked up, and then he'll be like, all right, fine. So bro will throw, 225 to warm up, boom, 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 for 3, stand up, throw 315 on it, boom, boom, you're getting warmed up. And then he'll go to 405, he'll hit it, and he'll go to 315, then like 350, and like 385, and then he went to 405 this year and he didn't get it, but he did get 385, which is crazy.
Wow.
I want to say he's 41 or 40, right at 40 years old. And so, but he was a college athlete. He wrestled in college. He's an absolute monster. And CrossFit is like his go-to. So, but yeah, it's crazy. We got some strong guys on our staff, but he above anyone, he's the strongest at bench press. However, I will take the deadlift at 525. I have never seen him deadlift 525. I've seen him match me at 505, but for now I'll take the deadlift for strongest on staff at Elevation.
Man,
Nice.
Buck don't give a crap. I love it.
Buck's a beast. He's the man. You ain't messing with him for real.
Oh yeah, he's my first draft pick now on who do you want in an alleyway to walk with you.
That's right.
Yep. Absolutely. He's got more than 2 guns, which are his biceps. Anyways,
He has to check them whenever he flies.
That's right. So
yeah,
when
exactly.
you're when you're not lifting and you are officially in production baddie mode, give us a bit of your snapshot, your background in production. How'd you get your start and what led to your role today?
Yeah, production baddie. That's still crazy. So started serving when I was 12. Kind of always been in and around the church, but started running cameras when I was 12. Did an internship at Elevation. Like many of us at 18 years old were like, what the heck am I doing with my life? Where am I going? How am I have no idea what I'm doing. So I did like a year of college doing simulation and game development at a local community college, which is actually pretty sweet. I wish I had, I don't wish, but like, it was a good little stint of college, but did that for about a year. Ended up interning at Elevation, came on staff for about 3 years, do as a production director. So I got to launch a non-permanent campus down in Florida, another non-permanent campus in Raleigh, North Carolina. And then, got a job opportunity that I thought would be awesome. End up leaving staff. The job opportunity falls through, and so we're back down in Florida for a couple months, and we end up moving out to Houston, Texas. Completely a God thing, and we had some relationships out there with people, and we knew we needed to get connected to a church. So immediately get connected to a church in Houston with some friends, and so we were on staff at Hope City Church out there in Houston.
Yeah.
And then in 22, beginning of 22, we end up moving, leaving that church and moving back to Charlotte, North Carolina. And so I've been in my role for about Andy Bentley, who was on the podcast a couple months ago. He used to have my job, so I shadowed under him for a little while. And I was super excited. Actually, Andy would love this story. I was actually really, really excited because I was back on staff for about a year on our AVL campus tech team. And so our team is responsible. That team is responsible for, servicing all 19 campuses, making sure gear's working, all that kind of stuff. And then they're like, hey, Shep, we want you to go help and support Andy at Valentine. And I was like, oh, sick. That'd be awesome. Like I can absolutely do that. So I start getting my feet wet over there, learning some of the systems. I see all the things that Andy's doing. I'm like, Andy, don't worry about this. I got this. I got that. I got this. I got that. I got you, right? And I got really excited because I'm like, man, there's so many things that I can do that now he doesn't have to do. He's going to be able to think at a higher level and just take this thing to the next level. And then he had some things happen personally in his life, and then just made the decision that he'd been on staff for 12 years, which is so awesome and so crazy. Not many people are planted for one place for that long. And so then he ended up transitioning off staff, and then I kind of took his role about a year ago, and then just started supervising our audio director and our lighting designer as well. And so now I oversee 3 guys on our staff, and I miss Andy. We talk every day. We talk often because we work with the Skylark guys all the time. Zach and Andy, they're great. And so, but yeah, that's kind of my long story in a 3-minute, 4-minute spiel. But yeah, now I'm our broadcast engineer over at Elevation and enjoying every minute of it, continuing to refine processes, do new things, train volunteers, hire staff, the whole 9 yards. It's a lot of fun. So
yeah. So Elevation has been very, influential. People watching what you guys have been doing for, it feels like a decade plus.
Yeah.
So if everybody's watching Elevation, seeing what you guys are doing, what do you guys watch? Where do you guys pull inspiration from in other churches or just outside events? Yeah. I'm a big proponent of like learn from anyone and everyone. And so, I'll watch some churches trying new things or different. I'll honestly because of social media, a lot of people send me stuff and I just think like, oh, that's a good idea, or oh, that's cool, or this. But we pull a lot of stuff like from the news. A big kick that we're on right now with our online experience is just transitions. And so I watch a lot of esports. I'm a big Call of Duty fan. I play a good bit of as many video games as my wife and life allows. But esports is another huge field where it's like, some of the esports tournaments are massive. The casting is very high energy, very quick transition. So we look at a lot of that stuff from esports to news to ESPN, College Game Day, Pat McAfee, shout out the GOAT, dude. He's been he's insane when it comes to hosting, but just like inspiration, it comes from anywhere, I think. And I think that mentality, that mindset that you don't have to look at the biggest, best next thing. Like I look at some of the stuff Mosaic's doing. I look at some of the stuff Zoe Church is doing, City Light, a couple other churches. And I look at some of the, in quotation, smaller churches, because I think that sometimes a lot of people who have less things, they innovate in better and, newer ways. That's like, oh, I'd never even thought about using, something, piece of gear like that, or, digging into some of that stuff. And so, honestly, anywhere and everywhere, I try to be very humble in that sense of open, of knowing I do not have all the answers when it comes to what I do and what we do. And we're consistently trying to okay, what if we try this? What if we try that? I think our online, like I said, our online experience, I feel is a testament of that. Because a couple weeks ago we had, or I guess a couple months ago when we did tour,
We had rented in some LED walls for tour specifically, just for like our online eFam set that we had, where set up just like rolling like B-roll and all that kind of stuff on it. But we were like, hey, what if we pull these things in and shoot on them for our pre-experience? And on this one, we're gonna have baptism B-roll, and on this one, we're gonna have numbers. And we're gonna tell a story and do this and do some transitions. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna transition to our Concord campus, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna split the frame in half, have one person on this LED wall, one person on this LED wall, and then we'll do a little transition. So it's all ideas flow, and I think that's the key. Is just like we try to be very, very innovative and just learn and look anywhere and everywhere. So
yeah. Blake, I'm sure you've seen some of Shep's content on on Instagram and on
Toby,
videos.
don't tell him that I'm a fan. That's embarrassing for me.
It reminds me of what my kids used to love on YouTube. It was like other kids playing with toys. And I feel like that's what Shep's doing. He's like, okay, guys, today I'm going to play with this toy. I'm going to show you how it works. And we're going to do some cool stuff with it. So give us a little insider baseball into some of the cool toys that you've gotten to play with recently at Elevation. Like, what are some of your favorites? What are, what are kind of the tools and the tactics, the toolbox you have at your hand to make the experience come alive in your live stream?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, like, it sounds, we do have some cool gadgets. I'll get to the cool gadgets. A lot of what we're doing is just diving further into the current infrastructure that we have. So, we have a ROS Acuity right now, but if you have any sort of ROS products, touch drive, anything like that, memories, custom controls, and building out different scenes in there has been a lot of what we've been doing and experimenting with when it comes to transitions. We use ROS Expression for a lot of things. And so one of our guys, he's been diving deeper into that. Practically, we just this past week put in a telestrator. It's a program. It's a program of a telestrator. I guess a telestrator is like a device. I don't really know. Anyways, it's just a black magic like deck link card. And then so this company basically writes software for you to basically, like Kirk Herbstreit type thing where they're, doing stuff on college game day, circling players, doing plays, things like that. So we just put that in this past week just for pastor to call for something to be like circled or whatever. And so, we did it live this past Sunday, and our guy in the back, Justin, he was like drawing and circling words and that kind of thing. So I feel like it's like consistently new ways of supporting Pastor Stephen on ways to preach. So like we did the earlier this year, we added that touch screen in for him to be able to scroll and do that kind of thing. We added a spider cam this year, which is a lot of fun, very, very crazy, very versatile. And so with that, this past Sunday, we actually did our pre-experience. We did a one take for 3 different segments. And so it kind of just gave us that dynamic ability where it's like, hey, we have an incredibly active online audience, and we want to make sure that we're using things to engage them at the highest level and keep them engaged. And so we're like, hey, we got the spider cam, and truthfully, we didn't get it because of that. We got it because another piece of gear went down. We're like, you want to spend that money over there repairing that, or you want to spend that money over here? And so it was just kind of a great segue into that. And but yeah, just trying to use it to the full ability, using transitions. What's the other piece? We're getting a disguise. We're renting a disguise server for Christmas. And so if you're familiar with disguise, I'm still learning all the things that it does, but one of the big things that excited us was XR and a little bit of AR, data tracking and things like that, trying to kind of bring more things to life. I know sometimes AR can get kind of cringy just depending on how you use it and stuff like that, but creating more active visuals for the worship experience, using our scenic LED, in just a kind of a more engaging way with notch, with using notch blocks in disguise. So learning a lot about that right now. And then just kind of continuing to dive into the current technology, I think is really, really important. Just because I'm like, I'm a big proponent of asking the question, why? Why was it set up this way? Is this the best way that it can possibly be done? Are there other factors? Are there limiting factors? Are there things that we didn't take into consideration? And so I'm a big evaluator. And so looking at our system as a whole and being like, okay, what do we have? What do we, I don't want to have to spend money if I don't have to. I think that's like a big conception that people think is like, oh, these mega churches, they just want to spend money and have the coolest toy and the biggest gadget. I'm like, no, we've had the Vericams now for 7 years. I got them in 2019, and everyone's like, when are you guys getting Red? When are you guys getting Alexis? I'm like, no, they're doing great. We're chilling. Like, we spent that money years ago. We want to get the most out of our gear. Like, we just upgraded 10-year-old SD10s, and so it's like we were riding those things. Those boys were giving us
what did you
mad
upgrade
problems.
to?
We got the 338 at front of house, the SD5Q at monitors, and then we added a quantum engine to our SD5 that was in the broadcast.
If you kept the SD10 for 10 years, you're stuck on that 338 now for the next 338 years.
Yeah, or days, whichever one.
Ooh, that's a good conversion. That's a good conversion.
I was like, one of those two. But yeah, so I think, like, we really try to use the heck out of our gear, like really truthfully, we push it to the limit. We've been using Resolume for a really long time for a lot of our visuals. I'm trying to think what else, other cool gadgets or anything. Touchscreen was a big thing. Telestrator was a big thing. The Spider Cam obviously was a big upgrade. Dang. But yeah, that's kind of the gist. But like I said, it's a lot of okay, what do we have? How do we maximize what we have? Like I was even talking with our lighting designer, and I'm like, okay, when it comes to certain shots and angles in our auditorium, we want to make the auditorium feel really big in a lot of our shots. But we also want to make sure that there's context to the shots. Like say your house right shooting, capturing pastor. There's a dark space, when you're shooting, because some of those angles get backstage, and so we're like brainstorming different ways of, okay, how do we add a fixture here that can come down and then go back up, so that way you've got exits clear and whenever people are transitioning on and off. And so just trying to like brainstorm more in that front and be like, okay, what can we do in here? What do we have? What can we do? Where can we rig stuff? That kind of thing. And I think that's just that's the vein we try to live in. So,
yeah. And like you said before, like everything's online now. You can watch what everybody's doing. And so, there are a lot of smaller churches looking at Elevation thinking like, well, that's awesome, but I could never pull it off. And I personally, I hate that attitude of like, don't look at and think like you can't pull it off. Work with what you've got and, create something incredible. What are, do you have any, you look like a gamer, you talk like a gamer. Do you have any cheat codes where you're like, hey, if you don't have all the cool toys, here's a couple cheat codes to make your live stream really pop. A church with limited resources. What are some of your cheat codes?
Yeah, that was a great question. I love the way you set that up. I think so. I was at a church a couple of months ago, and just I try to answer as many questions as I can online, truthfully, because it's a lot. But I was at a church a couple of months ago, and they were asking me like, "Hey, we really want iMag in the room," and I'm like, "Okay, why?" And they gave the reasons. Everyone's got iMag. Elevation's got everyone's got iMag, right? And so we looked at the camera setup and we looked at the way things are going, and I was like, honestly, bro, don't spend money on iMag unless your pastor truly feels like, and the room wasn't, it was like a 500 to 700 seat room. So it wasn't a massive room. And so it's like, if your pastor has feels like everyone's being connected with, and he's able to chat with everybody and everyone's engaged in the sermon, there's no need for iMac. You don't need it. And so I think sometimes it's like, it's looking at some of those things and be like, hey, what do you actually need? So in terms of live streams and quality, lighting is everything. I know so many people are just like, we want the reds, we want this. But if you have a Blackmagic camera and you spent the money that you spent, like, let's look at lighting and try to maximize lighting. So the other day, we were just looking at, I was just standing in the auditorium, just looking at everything like, okay, show me your sermon scene. And we look at the sermon scene and I'm like, okay, cool. Like, what are these 4 moving fixtures really doing, shooting down at the stage? Like, you can't really see them. The haze is gone by the middle of the sermon. Like, what are these guys doing? And so I was like, great, take these 2, shoot them at that wall, take these 2, shoot them at that wall, put a camera over here with the background as that wall, so you don't have like infinite depth on that shot. And then immediately you add 2 more sermon cameras that he already had, he just wasn't using. And it's like, bam, there you go, just like that, there you go. And so some of it's that, where it's like, okay, think about what you got. Okay, this is what I have. What are these things doing during this time, and how can they serve this? And so that's where I feel like sometimes my strength comes into play, is like, I'm very, very strategic when it comes to a lot of that stuff, of thinking inside the box and being like, I want to spend $0. It's like my goal. You know what I mean? I don't want anyone, I don't want to have to, I'm never going to be the person that's sitting here saying, you need to spend this money on this thing because of XYZ. It's like, you probably have what you need. But
Stephen, you've just been hired at Church Gear. That is one of our biggest brand values. You've just been hired.
Amen. Spend no money, make all my dreams come true.
Your passport's in the mail.
Great. Man, where y'all at?
Nashville, Tennessee. You need your redneck password here.
Yeah, great. Let me get that. But I think it's that. I think it's a lot of that, where it's just taking what you have. A couple other cheat codes. I think it comes back to preparation and planning, I think, is a cheat code. I think a lot of times Sundays we kind of walk into Sunday with just this like, all right, we're about to just do the thing versus actually like, okay, how did we actually prepare and think through, okay, we're going to go from this segment to this segment to this segment to this segment. I think the more we can think through the vein of how are we doing transitions from the worship team to the creative side of things to production, everything works together. You know what I mean? And I think the way you prepare as a team and the way you kind of come together and sync up, like, great, if we're doing these 3 songs of worship, how are we transitioning from song to song to song? Because I think there's so much power in the way that you prepare. And I think that like we look at gear, we're like, how do we maximize this gear? Well, it's like, actually, you might need to maximize your time. You know what I mean? You might need to maximize the way you prepare and the way you plan, because sometimes making some small tweaks of adjusting call times or holding people accountable to call times can oftentimes be the difference maker of like a really, really stressful morning, or a morning where you have enough margin to innovate, to train, to, come up with ideas. I think that's a part of our strength, is like we really try to be very intentional with time. And just knowing that, like, great, we have a run through at 8 a.m. on Sunday. So we know, okay, we need to get this done by this time, and we all need to be in places by this time. And we got to have, we're going to do a quick little prayer on stage at, 7:55 or right before run through and all that kind of stuff. And so we try to be very intentional with our timing of a morning. I think that oftentimes allows us to kind of have that margin that we really need in order to kind of adjust things and make tweaks. And so many people ask me that question, is like, Shep, how are you doing all this stuff? Leadership this, leadership that. It's like, hey, no, like, let's like come together, have a conversation, talk about the tensions you have, talk about the things that are frustrating you or whatever it is, and come with solutions, come with ideas and how we can work together and how we can get better. And I know sometimes it's like pulling teeth. I know I've been in the seat where you're having I've never actually pulled someone's tooth. In fact, I've only had one tooth pulled. But I do know like that feeling sometimes of like, man, I just want to do this thing. But, sometimes it's worth taking a breath, slowing down, getting to know, okay, what is your flow on a Sunday? Worship team, creative team, what is your flow on a Sunday? Production, what is your flow? What do we need? How do we need to work together? And I think sometimes the cheat code is just probably working together instead of necessarily gear all the time. But there are always gear things that you can do too. But yeah.
Now we know how Shep got the nickname Broadcast Baddie, because if you don't focus and get your call time, he will pull your teeth.
That's right.
Yeah. Teeth being pulled. Yeah, that's for sure. Add it to the resume.
And if if a church planner approached you and said, hey, I'm going to launch a church or a campus with 100 or 200 people, and I want to create a compelling live stream, a really attractive live stream, but we have very limited budget, where are you going to start?
I literally was just over at MXU recently, so they're going to be dropping a little thing soon about live streaming. Honestly, when it comes to live streaming 100 to 200 people, I would first ask the question, okay, what is the value that we're adding to the internet with a live stream?
Yeah.
And if your pastor is so passionate about a live stream, okay, let's set something up, and then we need to allocate a little bit of funds for that. But honestly, like when it comes to live streaming, I mean, everyone has one of these, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's got a phone, and you can live stream for free. Like you can stream off of a phone, you can set it up in the back of the room, you can do some audio things. We talked a little bit about OBS in our MXU thing, because OBS is a free software for you to download. It just requires hardware, right? You can't go wrong with Blackmagic encoders. You can't go wrong with little Resi encoders. Most of them are priced at a price point under $1,000. You can get plans. And then when it comes to cameras specifically, really DSLRs are going to be the go-to. Like I said, it's so conversational when it comes to it too, because it's like you start with the question, what is the value that we're adding with the live stream? What do we want people? What do we, because at the end of the day, the internet is so like crammed full of junk, and church live streams can be considered junk in that aspect too. And so I would just be very careful with like, okay, like you want to make sure that you're serving a purpose on the internet. And I think even for me, like being on social media, I have to ask myself, what is the purpose that I'm serving other people with on the internet? Because it's not for everybody. And so I think that's where you start, is you ask your question, how do we, like, what is the purpose of this live stream? And if your pastor's like, you know what, I really want to live stream, I want to grow something, I would recommend, okay, let's let's invest more in recording. Let's invest a little bit more in capturing and audio and the look of a recording. If I were to launch a church, and I actually was talking with one of my buddies who's launching a church in Phoenix next year, I said I would spend more money buying a nice camera that you can use for creative, that you can capture your sermon, you can capture your weekend experience, record off your console, multi-track it if you need to, left, right it if you need to, pop a USB in and just record all the channels, whatever. And then honestly contract somebody to edit your stuff in post. At this point, it's like, you don't need, creatives. You don't need an on-staff creative. You can easily get away with contracting some of those creatives, but, that's where I would start, honestly, is like I would more so start in posting and finding your niche and finding your voice on the internet before you say, we need a live stream for Mama Joe down the street who just didn't want to come to church today. I was actually...
Mama Joe, justice for Mama Joe.
Justice for Mama Joe. So I think like if you identify, okay, what is the purpose of my church? What is the purpose that we're trying to build and create? I would start with, okay, I would start with building something from the ground up, like building something in person, building something intentional, building something practical. Like I think during 2020, it was like everyone needs a live stream because you can't meet in person. But now I just don't think that should even be a part of the conversation at the beginning of launching a church. I think it should be all about how are we communicating our vision and values to people? How are we gathering people, adding value to people in person? And then if you really have a passion for being online, like, yes, online can grow your church, but also like you got to chill sometimes and just do the legwork and do the groundwork of building the church yourself and inviting people. And there's so many tricks. I saw an ad for like church candy the other day. Now that I'm saying that out loud, you're going to get that ad. But
I love Brady.
I'm not against it. I'm not against it, but I am very, very careful about like making sure people ask the right questions before they do something. Like I don't care if you want to get on the internet, do what you want to do. But also I would say like be very intentional and have a plan, be consistent with it. I think for me, like, posting on social media, I found my niche. My niche was, one, I work at Elevation Church and I'm a broadcast engineer. So it's a very niche role in the church world. But then two, my posture is I want to help people and show people what we do and give you ideas and give you insight, but also just sometimes just show you like, hey, here's practically how you can do X, Y, Z, or here's practically how we can do this, or here's something funny or something that makes me laugh. And so I think that's what the internet is all about, is finding your niche. And I think churches will quickly get lost in the sauce if you're trying to just like, I need a live stream and I need to put content out. It's like, okay, well, let's find your voice let's find your voice in other ways. Let's post some sermon clips. There's a lot of pastors who've been popping off with sermon clips and just the quality of that. And I'm like, honestly, I would invest in that lane. I think podcasts are great. I don't think podcasts are fully washed yet.
Thank you. As you're on the Church Gear podcast right now, Blake, we're not washed.
Like, honestly,
we're not fully washed.
Everyone should cancel their podcasts are done. And I'm like, podcasts suck. No, I do think there's still a lane for a lot of pastors and people to. I just think that the podcast, like, there's such another level of in-depth conversation that you can have with people, and I think it's really, really valuable. So I don't think podcasts are washed by any means. I think I would probably push you towards doing your pastor doing a podcast over doing a live stream, because live streams is just like, dude, you can't control the production. You're not controlling some of the transitions, the people. It's like, no, keep church inside the building, keep church inside the four walls, build something on the exterior. But anyways, that's my thoughts. I know it's long and rambly, but I think it's an important, conversation to have when you're starting a church and you're like, man, we just got to be like Elevation. It's like, dog, chill. Like, this thing wasn't built overnight. It's almost 20 years old at this point. And I look at the people who, like, I look at Pastor Stephen and I'm like, okay, he has a very, very unique gift. Not everyone has, but also, he has a very unique voice and style of communication. And I would say like a very unique calling on his life. And so you don't need to be like Pastor Steven. You need to be like you. And I think if you're trying to start a church, you're trying to do anything, you can't look at that person and be like, I got to be like that. I got to do everything like that. It's like, no, you don't even know where that started. And I think that's where you have to start, is you got to figure out where am I starting? How am I starting? And then how am I getting to the next thing?
Yeah,
so
that's great. Blake, I'm a little bit nervous that all the garbage that he said is on the internet, that he's lumping us in with that. I mean, I think that'd be a real disaster if we were part of the problem.
Yeah, Toby,
you guys are great.
We're definitely filling up that can of garbage on the internet. And one of the ways
someone's got to fill it up.
Someone's got to do it. And one of the ways we fill it up is with other garbage stories, other disaster stories, we might say, about a moment in production where everything went wrong and how you fixed it, how you recovered, how you explained it to leadership afterwards,
or you didn't.
How you fled the country and left and went to Nashville. So, Shep, give us a disaster
Y'all really trying
story.
to get me to Nashville, huh?
Look, I'm just saying, when you said you try to figure out how to do things without spending money, you won me and Toby's heart. We're ready for you to come on over.
I love a good recruitment conversation. We should talk about recruiting. Talk about, hey, okay. Okay. I don't know if I should talk about it. Yeah, let's talk about it.
We can always cut it.
How much time we got?
We have 15 minutes. Let's go.
Okay, great. So, recruiting in church. I am so interested by this concept, because I think is there a rule where you need to call the manager or someone else's manager before you call the person? Is that a thing?
It's kind of like dating a girl that your buddy already dated. It's kind of like asking, hey, can I kind of pull your people?
Or, getting to know her father first by living with him.
And Shep, we do deal with this. Like, we have people that apply to jobs here at Church Gear, and they work at churches, and they're like, I love my church, I love where I'm at, but it might be time for a season change. Can we get further down this process before we open a conversation with the church? Because I don't want to lose my job. So it's a tricky situation.
Yeah. I find it so interesting because, even being a hiring manager at Elevation, like I don't want to rub people the wrong way and be like, oh, my fault. I didn't know to write a 5-page essay of why you should release this person to me. But I'm always thinking in that vein too. We're always thinking like, okay, how do you recruit people? How do you have conversations without being disrespectful and rude? Because that's not my intent. It's not my heart. At the end of the day, like I'm always like, hey, you're at where you're at. If you're happy there, be there. If you're growing there, be there. Like, don't, but I'm also a big proponent of like, I've moved around so many times in my life, and I just look and see, and I know not everyone's like me, so I'm not a great example, I think, in some cases, but my experience is, the times that I've moved, there's only been a few times where it was me making that decision versus an external thing making the decision, or, whatever. But I find that every time I've moved, every time I've changed scenes, it's always been a different environment. I've always learned so much more because of it versus remaining rooted. So I always, just to be transparent, I always wrestle with that tension of like, telling people to stay versus when is it right to go.
Sure.
And I don't know. I think the recruitment piece, you guys took me down that path. I just think it's a good thing to talk about more, because I don't want it to feel taboo and weird, but I also I'm a big proponent of like making sure that people, are introspective, asking themselves the right questions.
Yeah.
And then not running away from things. You know what I mean? Because I think there's so much more value in standing, say you've got a problem with a supervisor, say you've got a problem with this or a problem with that, like make it better is what I would tell people, is like, hey, make the thing that you're facing better before you decide to, turn tail. You know what I mean? Don't ever leave something, in a way that's in detrimental, need and desire, because at the end of the day, God's got you there for a reason, right? And that's the way I think about it, is like, God's got you there for a reason. Make it better, make it great. If you've done all of those things, you've talk to a mentor, then talk about transition, then talk about, okay, what would it look like? But I know not everyone's situation is as simple as that. But anyway, thanks guys for taking me on that tangent.
That's just the start of episode 2 with Shep, which we're going to revisit.
Write all of your observations down, and we'll do part 2 in 2025. Right. And you make a good point, because if you have problems internally and you go to the grass is greener where you water it.
Right.
Now, if I didn't water my grass, it would die, and that would be a disaster. And
You're
Toby
really trying to transition back.
Toby would come and make fun of me for it. So give us a moment where everything went wrong in production, worse than this transition.
Oh my God. No, that transition was great. So a disaster, dude. How disastrous do I go?
The worst
Okay.
one, the worst moment of your life.
This was pretty bad. This was pretty bad. So we're putting up not at Elevation, somewhere else, far beyond.
Smell-ovation.
Elevation Church. Putting up an LED wall at a new build, new campus, permanent facility. We've got the contractors there, we've got the company there, and we're like, great, this is going well. We're ground stacking it, and so we got the ground stack pieces. And I look at everything, I'm like, great, this is awesome. This is gonna look good. It's gonna feel good, all that kind of stuff. And I glance at the guys. I'm like, hey, do you guys have sandbags for the ground stacking apparatusi? And they're like, oh no, we got to go grab some sandbags, and we'll put them on. I'm like, great, awesome, make sure you sandbag it, don't go higher than 3. Honestly, you should sandbag it now before you keep building. And so, but then I got roped into going and getting the sandbags, which was fine. I was like, great, I'll go grab sandbags. Hey, y'all chill, don't go super high, do your thing. So go to Home Depot, get the sandbags, do the thing, checking out, get a phone call from one of the guys. And he's like white faced. He's like, the LED wall just fell.
Oh.
And I'm like, is everyone okay? Like, are you good? And he's like, well, yeah, so and so like fell and is on the floor. And I was like, okay, get out, call the ambulance. First off, I literally call the ambulance, click, hung up. And so then we drive back with the sandbags, and yeah, very unfortunate. No one was hurt, which is a good thing. Yeah. Absolutely beautiful. Nobody got seriously injured. But just one of those moments where you're just like, man, this sucks. How am I gonna, we got to launch this campus in like, I think it was like a week or two from then. And so it's like, how do I explain this to leadership? And it was just, dude, it was a fiasco, but definitely a disaster. The whole thing fell down. There were about 4 to 5 panels high at that point. And so, yeah, very, very, very difficult situation, very weird situation. Because too, it's also like, we were working with a company where we're really good friends with them. So they took care of us. They took great care of the situation and all the people, which was awesome, rectified it and all that kind of stuff. But still one of the most like terrifying phone calls that I ever got in a Lowe's while I'm checking out.
Well, and also you told them like, come on guys, what the heck?
I'm not I just try, dude. I just try. Sometimes maybe I was talking too fast. That's probably what it was. I'm a fast talker. They probably said, hey, make sure you go high enough. And before you put, maybe
before I
sure
get back here with these sandbags.
Before I get back here, y'all better be done. Maybe I said something like that, but no, that was disastrous. Absolutely terrifying. That was the only thing. That was the only like big thing where I was like, dude, this is terrifying. However, Elevation, the scariest thing that happened at Elevation for me, it was like 2 weeks into my current role. And I had removed a device in CER because I was like, man, what the heck is this thing doing? It was like a reference thing. And, I was like, I'm taking this thing out. So I remove it, test everything. Everything's good to go. The 9:30 experience. And I tested this like during the week. We do a broadcast on Wednesday. Everything's good to go, chilling. We're great, dandy. And then the 9:30 experience starts, and then immediately reference, all 8 cameras just, and it just drops for half a second and comes back. And I was like, yo, what was that? And so it's every 2.5 minutes, this reference thing is going. And I start like, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is terrifying. So I jump on the phone with Andy, shout out Andy Bentley, and I'm like explaining to him what's happening. And it's like 30 minutes. Pastor starts preaching. We're 30 minutes into the experience. This thing's happening every 2.5 minutes. Getting text messages. Everyone's like, "What is going on? What are these cameras doing?" You can see it on the screens. It's going online. You can see it at campuses. And I'm literally just like. And then we eventually come to the simplest solution, which was, hey, frame sync the cameras from the switcher. And I'm literally like, duh, why didn't we do that off the rip? Like we're digging into the weeds of this and that and the other thing. We ended up getting it fixed, but it's like 35 minutes go by of just this freaking of reference dropping and coming back. Absolutely terrifying. But it set me up to be like, okay, I'm fresh into my job. I need to know everything about this system.
Yeah.
And so it kind of set in my mind. I was like, told my boss, I was like, hey, I got it. Don't worry about it. Like, I know that was crazy, whatever. We're going to test things. We're going to get it right, get it fixed. But then I'm actually going to have a better understanding of this entire system because of this thing that happened. So absolutely terrifying, being in that role and pastors preaching, even all of the, so all of the ISO captures of all the cameras were glitching out as well. And so luckily the social team had a camera set up up somewhere. And so we ended up using that angle during the sermon and to cover the frame glitches that were happening for like half the sermon. So
Yeah.
Social team coming in clutch.
Yo, shout out social teams. Y'all stop making fun of them. They're doing the Lord's work. Tell them to set up that backup camera in your auditorium this
Love
weekend.
Well, you know, that could have almost served as your tech takeaway there, Shep, but I'm going to ask for another one because I'm a greedy person.
Oh my gosh.
Could you give us one more piece of advice, you know, of all the things we talked about today that could kind of help a church out of any size?
Oh my goodness. Be nice to people. Number one thing, like fix your attitude, make sure Jesus is at the center.
Yeah,
like,
Blake, you stupid idiot.
All right, Toby. You need to
read
listen.
your Bible. No, but seriously, I think, you know, hearing it from you hear it from your pastor, you hear it from your leadership, you hear it from your mom, your dad, but like seriously, like get into the Word of God and read your Bible. Your pastor preaches a 30 to, I don't know how long he preaches, 30 to 45, an hour, maybe 3. But your pastor works hard and preaches every single Sunday. So you have the content that you need. Yeah. If you need content, you can watch Pastor Stephen on a Sunday, but you have the content you need to dive into the Word of God. Do that. Get your heart right. Fix your attitude, come in with a smile, be nice to people. It's not about you. It's about what you can do and how you can serve other people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And if you're stuck in this rut, in this cycle, maybe it's time for you to hand the baton to the next guy, because the person who has the best attitude on your team is the person that you should be investing in, that you should be pouring into. So that's my tech takeaway is fix your attitude.
I love that. Lucky for me, my attitude is perfect. But a lot of people, I'm sure, will really appreciate that. All jokes aside, Shep, thank you for joining us so much. Is there anything you want to plug, anywhere you want to point people towards?
If you want to subscribe to my Instagram, I'm doing a lot of extra content on there, getting ready to jump into YouTube next year as well in 2025, do a couple more podcasts, but just Shep on Instagram and all socials with 6 underscores. So don't get it twisted. I'm trying to purchase just regular Shep. The guy won't hit me back. I think he's blocked. So if you guys could help me and DM him, say, hey, please sell your username to Shep with 6 underscores. I'll pay you for it. That's all.
I've been trying to buy church gear without a space for 4 years. Yeah. I understand.
Who owns it?
Someone who he's logged out of it and he can't get into it, and so
can't Instagram fix that for us? Like if we just email them and say, hey, there's a dead account.
We just got a Facebook rep. I need to message her.
Yeah, give it a shot.
Honestly.
Anyways,
tell her about Shep too.
Well, Shep, thank you for I'll hit her up for both. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely, thank you guys.
Thanks for hanging out with us. We hope to see you back next week for more absurd stories, tech takeaways, and overall buffoonery here at the Church Gear Studios.
Blake, we always ask our guests to share the episode, but you know who I'd really like to share this episode?
Shephen Sheppard?
Yeah, Shephen Sheppard. I mean, the guy has such an intelligent and well thought out social media presence, the way he is, showing what they do at Elevation Church, really just putting awesome content out there. I'm hoping that he enjoyed being on this episode so much that he'll share it with his friends.
Hey, Shep, whatever we got to do, man. We can get a hat in the mail. We can send 150% off of all the church gear. Just give you the whole company. Just share this episode, man.
Yeah, what if Shep shared this episode and then all of Shep's friends shared this episode? Like, we'd finally be bigger than, what, the Beatles?
Or Walmart.